Most people didn't notice her when they walked past. Maybe it was the wheelchair. Maybe it was the silence she carried like a second skin. Or maybe it was because they thought she didn't want to be seen. But that morning, in the busy terminal of Gate 34A, she was there, alone, with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a to-do list she had no intention of doing. Her name was Isabel Raines, 41, architect, once voted one of Boston's most influential women under 40, but now, just another quiet figure near the window, staring out at planes she didn't want to board. Her legs didn't move the way they used to, her days didn't either. The accident had taken a lot, mobility, independence, even her sense of identity. But what hurt more than anything was how people looked through her, not at her, through her. As if being in a wheelchair meant she was someone else's responsibility, someone already taken care of. She wasn't. The lounge around her buzzed with the kind of energy that made you feel even lonelier. Suitcases rolling, people shouting into phones, espresso machines hissing, and then a voice, gentle, unhurried. "Mind if we sit here? There's not a lot of space left." She looked up. A man, maybe mid-30s, kind eyes, worn hoodie. Beside him was a little girl, no older than 7, hugging a sketch pad to her chest. Isabel glanced at the empty seats around her. There were plenty. But something in his voice wasn't about space. It was about something else, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Presence. She nodded once. He smiled in thanks. No pity, no awkward stares. Just a quiet man and his daughter sitting down like it was the most normal thing in the world. And for a moment, it almost felt like it was. The girl didn't say a word at first. She just swung her legs under the chair, sketchpad balanced on her knees, tongue peeking out as she focused. Her dad pulled out a pack of crackers, offering one to Isabel without a second thought. She hesitated, then took one. Not out of hunger, just because it felt like the polite thing to do. And it had been a while since anyone offered her something without expecting anything in return. "I'm Caleb," the man said, adjusting his daughter's jacket as he spoke. "This is Juniper. She's a bit quiet at first, but once she starts drawing, the world kind of disappears." Isabel gave a small smile, unsure what to say back. He didn't fill the silence, didn't try to make small talk. He just sat there, calmly watching planes taxi in and out of the runway like they had nowhere else to be. It was strange but comforting. Most people avoided her eyes. Some smiled too wide, trying too hard. Others didn't bother at all. But this man, he didn't look at the chair, he looked at her. A few minutes passed. Then Juniper stood up, walked over, and handed Isabel a piece of paper. It was a quick sketch. 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, and one in a little wheelchair. All smiling, under a giant sun. Isabel blinked. She hadn't cried in public in years, had trained herself not to. But her throat tightened before she could stop it. Juniper just gave a tiny shrug. "I like your hair," she said softly, then went back to her seat like it was nothing. But to Isabel, it was everything. She held the drawing in her lap like it was made of glass. No one had made something just for her in a long, long time. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. By the time the rain started tapping softly against the windows, something had shifted. Isabel wasn't sure when it happened exactly. Maybe it was when Juniper offered her that drawing. Maybe it was Caleb's quiet presence, his unspoken permission to just exist without explanation. Or maybe it was the simple fact that, for once, no one was rushing her. She found herself speaking before she even meant to. "I used to love airports," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "before the accident." Caleb looked over, not startled, not pushing for more, just listening. "I liked people watching," she went on, imagining where they were going, who they were missing. Felt like everyone had a story and I had time to notice them all. She paused. "Now I just feel stuck. Like the world's moving on without me, and I'm just here, trying not to be in the way." There was a long silence, not uncomfortable, just still. Caleb nodded slowly. "You're not in the way." She let out a soft laugh. "You don't have to say that." "I know," he said. "I said it because it's true." Isabel looked at him then, really looked. There was no performance in his eyes, no obligation. Just a man with tired hands, a kind face, and a daughter who saw people the way the world should. "How long's it been?" he asked gently. She knew what he meant. 14 months, she said, since I could stand without help, since I felt like myself. Caleb didn't rush to comfort, he didn't offer platitudes, he just nodded again. Juniper had curled up beside him now, drawing stars in the corners of her sketchbook. The lounge had grown quieter, flights were delayed, rain was steady. And in that quiet little bubble of unexpected warmth, Isabel realised something. She didn't want to leave yet. Not just the lounge, not just this moment. She didn't want to return to a life that looked full but felt hollow. Not if it meant losing this, whatever this was. Isabel shifted slightly in her chair, her fingers brushing over the edges of Juniper's drawing. She couldn't stop looking at it. It was simple, crayon lines and soft colours. But it had more warmth than anything she'd received in months. I used to draw, she murmured, mostly to herself. Caleb looked over. Yeah? She nodded. In college. A lot of charcoal and ink, big moody pieces. I thought I was going to be an artist. Then I discovered architecture and that was it. Blueprints felt like poetry. He smiled. I get that, structure and story at the same time. She gave him a curious glance. What about you? You don't look like the architecture type. He chuckled. Army medic, then nursing school. Now I work nights at a rehab clinic in Syracuse. Her eyebrows lifted. That's a heavy job. Sometimes, he said, but it keeps me grounded. People are real there. No small talk, just pain and trying. And some days that's enough. There was a pause, then Isabel said quietly, that sounds kind of beautiful and hard. Caleb shrugged. Most worthwhile things are both. Juniper had curled up with her head on his arm now, her sketch pad resting on her chest. She okay? Isabel asked softly. Yeah, he nodded. Just tired. We've been travelling since yesterday. Where to? He looked out the window for a second. Florida, visiting her mum's parents. She doesn't remember much about her mum anymore. It's been 4 years. Isabel's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Caleb didn't flinch. Thank you. We try to keep her world soft. She's got a strong heart, though. Isabel looked at Juniper again, sleeping so peacefully in the middle of a noisy airport. A little girl who saw past wheelchairs and walls, who drew people smiling even when they weren't. And for the first time in what felt like ages, Isabel wasn't thinking about her flight, or her father's expectations, or the tightly scheduled itinerary waiting in her inbox. She was thinking about this moment, this family, and the strange, quiet feeling of being exactly where she was meant to be without trying. The airport speakers crackled overhead. Another delay. Isabel didn't mind. She glanced at her phone. A string of texts from her father sat unread. Driver will be waiting curbside. Your flight board's in 90 minutes. Don't be late. Have the assistant call me when you land. Her thumb hovered over the screen for a moment. Then she locked it and placed the phone face down on the table. Caleb noticed but didn't comment. Instead he asked, you flying home or heading somewhere? Supposed to be going to Boston, she said. My father's been managing my schedule since the accident. Says it keeps things efficient. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Efficient's not always the same as kind. That landed harder than she expected. She leaned back and stared out the window. You know what's weird? She said. Everyone assumes I'm being taken care of, that there's a team handling everything, but most days it's just me and silence. Caleb didn't rush to fill the space. I think people are more comfortable assuming you're fine, he said after a moment, because then they don't have to ask. Isabel looked at him. There was no pity in his voice, just understanding, like he'd sat in that same silence before. I stopped expecting kindness, she admitted. Stopped hoping people would see me as a person and not a situation. You shouldn't have to earn that, Caleb said. His words didn't fix anything, but they didn't need to. They just landed, soft, solid, honest. Isabel reached for her coffee and took a sip, cold, bitter. She smiled anyway. Worst coffee in the state, she muttered. Caleb grinned. It's kind of a tradition. Every time Juniper and I fly somewhere, we find the worst vending machine coffee possible. She says it builds character. Smart kid. The best, he said, looking down at her with a softness that didn't need explaining. Isabel let the warmth of that moment settle into her chest. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't bracing herself. She wasn't performing. She was just being. And it felt good. The gate agent announced boarding over the speakers, her voice echoing through the lounge. Isabel didn't move. She could see the gate from where she sat. The crisp uniforms, the flashing lights, the neat little line of passengers clutching phones and carry-ons, eyes locked on the next thing. Caleb shifted beside her. That your flight? She nodded slowly. Yeah, Group 1, Special Assistance. She said it like it was someone else's appointment, not hers. You need help getting there? he offered gently. She hesitated, then surprising herself said, "Would you walk with me?" Caleb looked at her, not with confusion, just patience. Of course. She reached for her wheels and for the first time in weeks didn't wait for someone to push her, didn't ask, didn't brace. She moved. It wasn't graceful, and it wasn't far, but every inch she pushed was hers. As they rolled down the hallway, Juniper skipped ahead, humming to herself. "You know," Isabel said, "I don't usually ask strangers to walk me anywhere." "I don't usually get asked," Caleb replied with a smile. They paused just short of the gate. Isabel looked up at the glowing sign, "Flight to Boston, on time." The agent waved toward her. "Ms. Raines, ready to board?" Isabel looked at the gate, then at Juniper, then at Caleb. Something in her stomach twisted. Not nerves, not fear, just the faint, rising feeling of choice. And how unfamiliar it felt to actually have one. "I think," she began, her voice steadier than she expected, "I might skip this one." The agent blinked. "Ma'am?" Isabel turned her chair slightly, backing away from the gate. "Not today." She heard Juniper's soft gasp of delight behind her. And Caleb? He didn't ask questions. He just nodded once, like he'd known all along. As they wheeled back toward the lounge, the rain was still falling. But now it sounded different. Not like something that trapped her, but like something washing the old weight off. Back in the lounge, the chairs were mostly empty now. Flights had left. Crowds had thinned. But somehow the space felt warmer than before. Isabel sat near the window again. Juniper curled up beside her with a pack of fruit snacks and a blanket Caleb had pulled from his carry-on. The rain had softened to a mist. Outside, the runway lights blinked through the grey like stars that refused to go out. "I've been in crowded rooms where I felt invisible," Isabel said suddenly. She didn't know why she said it, maybe because the quiet was kind enough to hold the truth. Caleb, sitting across from her, nodded but didn't speak. "I used to walk into meetings," she continued, "and they'd all stand. Clients, partners, everyone respected me. Or at least they respected what I built." A pause. "But after the accident, it changed. People still smiled, still said the right things, but it was different. Their eyes would flick down to the chair, then look away, like they weren't sure where to place me anymore." She glanced at Juniper, who was now sketching a tiny plane with wings too big. "It's hard to explain what it feels like to be pitied and ignored at the same time." Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I don't think you need to explain. I think I get it." She looked up surprised. He continued, "When my wife passed, people were kind, brought food, cards, said all the usual things, but after a while they stopped calling. Not because they were cruel, just life moved on for them. And I became a reminder of something they didn't want to look at." Isabel exhaled slowly. "Yeah, that's exactly it." For a few moments they just sat in the quiet. Then Juniper looked up from her drawing. "Are you staying here forever?" she asked. Isabel smiled. "I don't think forever, but I'm not leaving just yet." Juniper nodded, like that answer made perfect sense. And for Isabel it kind of did. She didn't know what came next, where she'd sleep tonight, how her father would react, what her calendar looked like anymore. But she knew this. For the first time in over a year, she wasn't doing something because she was supposed to. She was doing it because she wanted to. They found a vending machine down the hall, one of those ancient ones that hummed like it was alive. The buttons stuck a little, and the coffee tasted like burnt cardboard. It was perfect. Isabel laughed after the first sip, the sound catching her off guard. She covered her mouth, then let her hand fall. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Bad, huh?" "Terrible," she said. "Like it's trying to be coffee but gave up halfway." Juniper giggled, clutching a pack of pretzels in one hand and her drawing in the other. They sat on a bench near the windows, steam from their paper cups curling into the air like lazy questions. For the first time in weeks, Isabel hadn't asked anyone to push her, hadn't waited for someone to lead the way. She had moved, even if it was slow, even if it hurt a little. Every inch felt like something she had taken back. "I used to think independence meant doing everything by myself," she said softly. "But I'm starting to think maybe it just means choosing when to ask, when to rest, when to go." Caleb nodded slowly, and that sounds about right. Her phone buzzed again in her lap. She looked at it but didn't touch it. "The name on the screen, Dad." She didn't answer. "I've been following a plan I didn't make," she said. "For so long I forgot I had a say." "You always did," Caleb said gently. "You just forgot you were allowed to use it." She looked at him then, really looked. At the man with tired eyes, calloused hands, and a heart wide enough to carry his grief and still make space for others. "You and Juniper," she said, voice almost breaking. "You didn't fix me, you just showed up." He smiled. "Sometimes that's enough." Isabel turned back to the window. The rain had stopped. The tarmac shimmered in the late afternoon light. Somewhere, a plane took off with a low, rumbling roar, and for once she didn't feel left behind. She felt still and present, and exactly where she was supposed to be. Her phone buzzed again. Same name, same pressure. Isabel stared at the screen, fingers hovering. For a long time she had let that name dictate her days. Her father was never cruel, just exact, calculated, a man who believed in outcomes, not feelings. He'd organised her appointments, handled her aides, even scheduled her grief like it was a conference call. He loved her, she knew that. But somewhere along the way, his help had started to feel like a cage lined with silk. She silenced the phone and turned to Caleb. "Do you ever feel like, even when people mean well, they still take away pieces of you?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He let the question breathe. "Yeah," he finally said. "Love can do that if it forgets to ask what you want." She nodded slowly. "I used to speak up," she said, "used to fight back. I was the girl who once walked out of $1 million meeting because someone called me sweetheart." Caleb smiled. "That sounds like you." "I miss her," Isabel whispered. "The me before all this." "She's not gone," he said. "She's just been waiting for you to come back." The words hit harder than she expected. Juniper returned with a crumpled napkin and a chocolate chip cookie. She offered it without a word, her cheeks smudged with crumbs. Isabel took it gently. "You're kind," she said to the little girl, "but not in a way that makes people feel small." Juniper just beamed, like she knew exactly what that meant. Across the room, a final boarding call echoed for a different flight. Isabel didn't even glance at the gate. Instead, she pulled her phone out one last time, opened her calendar, scrolled through the week, meetings, check-ins, appointments, review calls. She hit select all, then tapped delete. She stared at the blank screen for a moment. It looked terrifying and free. Then slowly she opened her messages and typed one single line to her father. "I'm not coming back, not like before. No explanation, no apology, just the truth." They sat outside the terminal now, on a bench facing the drop-off lane. Juniper was drawing again, this time a tree with roots that stretched far beneath the ground. Caleb sipped what was left of the vending machine coffee, though it had long since gone cold. Isabel leaned back, eyes closed, feeling the wind against her face. "I used to hate waiting," she said, "felt like a waste of time." Caleb glanced at her. "And now?" She opened her eyes and smiled. "Now I think it's where everything actually happens." Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't look at it. Not anymore. "I don't have a plan," she said. "No hotel booked, no meetings, no idea where I'm going tonight." Caleb nodded. "That's okay, plans can wait." She turned to him. "You think it's crazy, walking away from everything like this?" "No," he said. "I think it's brave." Juniper looked up and held out her drawing. "This is you," she said, pointing at the tree. Isabel took the picture carefully. "Why a tree?" "Because you're strong," Juniper said, "and you're growing again." For a second, Isabel couldn't speak. Her throat tightened, but she didn't look away. That was the thing no one told you about healing. It didn't always come in hospitals or scheduled therapy. Sometimes it showed up in tiny moments, in burnt coffee, in a child's drawing, in a stranger who asked to sit down without asking what happened to you. "I think I'm going to stay in the city a few days," she said quietly. "Walk a little, eat badly, maybe get a haircut I'll regret." Caleb smiled. "Sounds like a great start." She looked out at the street. Cars passed, people moved, life didn't pause. But inside her, something had. Not in fear, in peace. "I thought I had to get back to who I was," she said. "But maybe I'm allowed to become someone new." "You are," he said. "Absolutely." Isabel looked down at her lap, at Juniper's picture, at the roots drawn in thick, confident strokes. And for the first time in a long time, she felt them under her too. Not from the life she had before, but from the life she could grow, starting now. What I love most about this story is that it doesn't try too hard. No one gets saved. It's just a woman, choosing to stay, quietly pushing her own chair, and deleting a schedule that never felt like hers. And honestly, that's enough. It doesn't need a big ending. Just Isabel, somewhere quiet, finally okay with herself, not knowing what comes next, and not needing to. She didn't know what came next. But for once, that felt like freedom. Thank you for staying with this story. If something in it spoke to you, even just a little, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts below. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is Rain Inside, and I'll see you in the next one.